The courtroom was silent, almost oppressively so, as the morning light crept through the tall windows. Every eye was fixed on the polished wooden doors at the far end, waiting for a figure whose presence alone could tilt the balance of power. And then, without warning, the doors burst open. A hush swept over the room, replaced instantly by a ripple of murmurs. Judge Caprio, known across the nation for her unshakable sense of justice, entered with measured steps. Her eyes scanned the room, taking in every face, every expression, as though she could read the truth hidden behind masks of composure. But one presence caught her gaze more than any other: Brandon Trent, the youngest son of former President Daniel Trent, sitting with an air of controlled confidence, though tension lingered around him like a storm cloud. The murmurs grew louder. How had Brandon managed to secure a courtroom appearance in what should have been a tightly controlled, high-stakes trial? The whispers carried the same question through every corner of the room. Could the son of a former president really bend the law to his will? But then something happened that no one expected. Brandon rose slowly, his movements deliberate. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath as he approached the bench, each step echoing against the marble floors. There was a quiet audacity in his stride, a challenge hidden behind polite decorum. And just like that, the tension in the room thickened, pressing on every witness, lawyer, and onlooker. Judge Caprio's voice broke the silence, calm but authoritative. We are here today to see that justice is served. No one, regardless of wealth or influence, is above the law. Her words hung in the air, heavy with significance, and yet there was an unspoken question lingering just beneath them. Would the courtroom see justice or spectacle? Brandon's defense attorney, a seasoned lawyer with decades of courtroom experience, rose to speak, projecting confidence and authority. "Your Honor, my client seeks nothing but fairness under the law," he said, his voice steady, though the faintest tremor betrayed the stakes involved. "The facts will show." He paused, letting the words sink in. The courtroom leaned in, hungry for the revelation, desperate to know what hidden truths would surface. Every eye was now on the prosecution. The lead prosecutor, known for her relentless pursuit of truth and accountability, stood and began laying out the case with precision. Her words painted a picture of alleged misconduct, privileges misused, and lines crossed. And as she spoke, the audience, both in the courtroom and those imagining this scene from afar, felt a chill. Could the son of a former president truly manipulate power without consequence? But then, almost imperceptibly, a flicker of doubt crossed the prosecutor's face. A piece of evidence, previously considered ironclad, had been questioned in the weeks prior. Could it unravel everything? The courtroom leaned forward as if instinctively sensing that the first cracks in the narrative were forming. Brandon's gaze never wavered. Behind the calm exterior, his mind raced, calculating every word, every move. There was a weight on his shoulders, a legacy he could neither ignore nor fully embrace. And in that moment, it became clear to everyone present. This trial was not just about facts and law. It was about morality, about choices, and about the invisible lines between loyalty and accountability. Then came a first bombshell. A witness, previously assumed reliable, hesitated under questioning. Her eyes darted nervously between Judge Caprio and Brandon. A single phrase slipped out, a phrase that could change the entire course of the hearing. The courtroom gasped collectively. No one had anticipated this revelation. Many hooks were firing in every mind present, sparking curiosity, fear, and anticipation. And just as quickly, the tension doubled. Members of the public watching from afar would later recount this exact moment as the instant when the courtroom transformed from a place of procedure into a theater of suspense. Every gesture, every pause, every whispered exchange now carried weight, suspense, and the implicit warning. Something monumental was about to unfold. Judge Caprio's eyes narrowed slightly, a signal to all that the balance of justice was delicate and that any misstep could tip it dangerously. "Proceed carefully," she warned, her tone firm but almost imperceptibly urgent. The words were a subtle reminder. This was a courtroom where truth, loyalty, and accountability would collide. Brandon's lips curved into a small, controlled smile, almost imperceptible, as if he had anticipated this exact moment. The audience could feel the storm gathering around him, yet he appeared unshaken. Each second now seemed stretched, elongated with suspense, every heartbeat echoing the unspoken question, who will hold the power when the gavel finally falls? The defense attorney spoke again, emphasizing morality, family, and honesty, appealing not just to legal precedent, but to universal human principles. "We are asking this court," he said, voice rising slightly with emotion, "to recognize that loyalty and accountability are not mutually exclusive. That honesty, even when inconvenient, is a virtue worth protecting." The courtroom absorbed every word, every syllable weighted with anticipation. Then, just as the energy seemed to peak, Brandon's eyes flicked toward a side table where an unexpected document had been delivered moments before. The tension ratcheted up instantly. Could this document change the course of the trial? Would it reveal hidden truths, secrets, or perhaps something more dangerous? And then, without warning, a whisper spread through the spectators. "Did you see that? That paper?" It was enough to ignite curiosity, speculation, and anxiety all at once. Every person in the room felt the suspense tightening like a noose, drawing them deeper into a story they couldn't look away from. Judge Caprio leaned slightly forward, signaling the seriousness of the moment. "We will examine every detail," she said, calm yet cutting through the rising tension like a blade. "Nothing will be overlooked. Justice requires clarity, and clarity requires patience." Brandon Trent sat back for a brief moment, a mask of composure, yet inside, a tempest of thought and strategy raged. He knew that this was more than a trial. It was a defining moment, a crucible that could shape public perception, familial legacy, and personal honor all at once. And then, just as viewers might imagine from their seats, the first real twist struck. A security guard, who had been overlooked, spoke up with information no one anticipated. A new piece of evidence, subtle but potentially game-changing, emerged quietly in the periphery of the courtroom, yet its implications were anything but quiet. The murmurs swelled into a roar of curiosity. People leaned in closer. The story had hooked them completely. Every pause, every glance, every syllable from that moment forward carried the weight of suspense and moral consequence. And that, more than anything else, marked the true hook of the day. In this courtroom, in this trial, nothing was certain. No one, not even the son of a former president, was above the law. The courtroom seemed to pulse with tension, each breath and shuffle magnified in the stillness. Brandon Trent's calm exterior masked a mind racing with strategy and anticipation. Every observer knew that the next move could tip the scales irreversibly. And then, something unexpected occurred that sent a ripple through the room. A legal aide, usually unnoticed, stepped forward with a confidential memorandum. The envelope trembled slightly in her hand, a subtle signal of the weight contained within. All eyes turned to Judge Caprio, whose expression remained inscrutable. Yet beneath her calm, her mind was already dissecting the possibilities. "We will review this carefully," she intoned, her voice steady, though the undertone hinted at the storm about to unfold. The courtroom leaned in, collective curiosity sharpening into something almost palpable. Brandon Trent's father, former President Daniel Trent, watched from the gallery. Though he remained silent, his presence cast a shadow across the proceedings. The murmurs among the spectators were immediate. Could influence reach across generations? Was the law strong enough to resist the pull of power and legacy? The questions hung thick in the air. Then, just as everyone held their collective breath, the memorandum was read aloud. The words, precise and damning, revealed contradictions in testimony and hidden connections between key figures. Gasps swept the courtroom. No one had predicted this revelation, And yet here it was, laid bare under the impartial gaze of Judge Caprio. Brandon's attorney immediately rose, countering with arguments emphasizing integrity, loyalty, and the personal responsibility of his client. "Your Honor," he began, voice firm but tinged with emotion, "my client has acted with honesty and respect. The document does not diminish his integrity. It merely illuminates the complexity of the circumstances." The prosecutor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease passing across her face. She had anticipated a straightforward path to justice, but the courtroom had shifted in subtle, unpredictable ways. New questions arose. Could loyalty to family obscure accountability? Could power mask the truth? Every corner of the room seemed to hum with the tension of possibility. And then, as if the drama were intensifying with perfect timing, a witness who had been silent until now stood abruptly. Her testimony was unexpected, contradicting previous statements and introducing fresh uncertainty. The courtroom collectively held its breath. Every detail she revealed acted as a mini-hook, pulling the audience deeper into the labyrinth of truth, lies, and moral complexity. Brandon Trent's eyes flicked toward the witness, but his expression remained calm, almost eerily so. Beneath that composure, however, the calculations were intricate. Every phrase she uttered had the potential to alter perception, sway judgment, and redefine the narrative entirely. The stakes were no longer just legal. They were personal, moral, and profoundly public. Judge Caprio, sensing the intensity, leaned slightly forward. "Proceed carefully," she said, each word deliberate, each syllable a subtle anchor amidst the escalating storm. The courtroom felt the weight of her command. Here, the moral fabric of justice and the human elements of loyalty and accountability were intertwined, each thread pulling taut with suspense. Then something happened that no one had anticipated. A procedural error, overlooked until this precise moment, surfaced in the record. It was a minor technicality on paper, yet its implications could shift the momentum. The audience felt the tension spike, and even the most composed onlookers could not hide their intrigue. Every whispered speculation, every glance exchanged, added layers to the narrative suspense. Brandon Trent's attorney seized the moment, emphasizing fairness and moral clarity. Even in the face of potential missteps, justice demands that we honor honesty, accountability, and respect. My client has done nothing to violate these principles. His voice resonated through the courtroom, but the weight of unpredictability pressed on every listener. The prosecutor, unflinching, countered methodically, outlining the potential consequences and reminding all present that no one, regardless of influence or lineage, is immune from scrutiny. Her words landed like stones in a quiet pond, each ripple spreading tension and curiosity further. And then, a small but pivotal twist. A side witness, previously dismissed as irrelevant, was suddenly called to testify. Her words were subtle, almost casual, but carried a sharp edge that cut through previous assumptions. She hinted at alliances, pressures, and choices that had gone unseen, her testimony planting seeds of doubt and anticipation that would grow through the entire trial. The courtroom leaned into every word. Each revelation acted like a mini-hook, building layers of suspense that would keep audiences engaged, unable to look away. Observers, both inside the room and imagining themselves witnessing the event, felt an almost physical pull. Every statement, glance, and hesitation mattered, and each could change the trajectory of the story entirely. Judge Caprio's gaze swept the room, her eyes landing briefly on Brandon Trent. A silent understanding passed between them. This was more than law. It was morality tested under the most intense scrutiny. Every decision, every action, and every word now carried immense weight, not just for those present, but for the broader perception of justice itself. And then, just as the tension seemed almost unbearable, a dramatic revelation emerged. A hidden correspondence surfaced, contradicting prior claims and exposing subtle manipulations. The courtroom gasped. Many hooks flared across the audience, each new twist tightening the narrative grip. Could Brandon Trent's actions be fully justified? Or was the shadow of influence unavoidable, stretching across even the most principled courtroom? The first half of the morning had concluded with a perfect storm of suspense, intrigue, and moral complexity. Viewers, hooked from the very first second, were now emotionally invested, their curiosity burning to see how Judge Caprio would navigate the intricate web of power, loyalty, and justice. Every mini-hook, every dramatic twist, had reinforced the ultimate question. In a courtroom where legacy, influence, and morality collide, can true justice prevail? The courtroom remained suspended in a fragile silence, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Brandon Trent's calm exterior had become almost a shield, hiding the storm of thoughts swirling behind his eyes. Every person in the room sensed the weight of what was about to unfold. The stakes were no longer abstract. They were immediate, personal, and inescapable. Judge Caprio leaned forward ever so slightly, her voice cutting through the tension. "We will proceed carefully. Each testimony, each document, each detail will be examined. Justice demands clarity, and clarity requires patience." The words, simple yet profound, echoed through the minds of everyone present. For a moment, even the murmurs of the spectators seemed to pause. The magnitude of her authority felt like a tangible force pressing down on the room. Then, without warning, a subtle movement drew all eyes. A junior clerk approached with another envelope, this one heavier, more official, and marked in a way that signaled importance. Brandon Trent's glance flicked toward it, but he made no move. Instead, he sat back, composed, as if daring the universe to challenge him. Many hooks were firing in every corner of the courtroom, questions, curiosity, and suspense intertwining to grip every observer. The prosecution rose once again, her voice firm, unwavering. "Your Honor, this document could prove pivotal. It has the potential to alter the understanding of prior events. We ask the court to consider it in full context." Her words carried both precision and gravity. Every ear strained. Every mind raced to anticipate what revelations would emerge. Could this be the moment that shifted momentum, or would it merely deepen the labyrinth of uncertainty? Brandon's attorney countered immediately, emphasizing principles over pressure. "Justice is not a tool for spectacle," he argued, voice measured but filled with intensity. "Every claim must be examined, not for headlines, but for truth. And truth demands fairness, honesty, and respect." His words resonated, serving both as a defense and as a moral anchor. The audience could sense the ethical tension, power and privilege pressed against fairness and integrity. And then, in a moment that would become unforgettable to those present, the envelope was opened. Documents, meticulously organized, were revealed. Letters, memos, and records that exposed unseen connections, secret pressures, and hidden decisions. The courtroom gasped collectively. Every page seemed to tell a story. Every line hinted at consequences yet unimagined. Brandon Trent's eyes never left the documents, yet he remained calm, his mind clearly racing. He understood that the courtroom had transformed into a crucible, a place where morality, legacy, and law collided. Each revelation acted as a mini-hook, layering suspense upon suspense, ensuring that no one could look away. Judge Caprio's gaze was sharp, unyielding, yet fair. "We will examine each document thoroughly," she stated, her tone a mixture of authority and gravity. The courtroom seemed to contract under her presence, the tension now almost unbearable. Every spectator, every participant, understood that the outcome of this trial would resonate far beyond these walls. A sudden, almost imperceptible shift occurred in the gallery. Former President Daniel Trent stirred slightly, a small frown crossing his face. The weight of family, legacy, and influence now pressed visibly against him. Could loyalty cloud judgment? Could power distort truth? These questions hung in the air, unanswered but palpably felt. Then something unexpected happened. A side witness, previously considered irrelevant, stepped forward with a statement so precise, so striking, that the courtroom collectively reeled. Minnie Hooks ignited like sparks. Every word she spoke cast shadows over prior testimony, challenging assumptions and deepening the suspense. Could Brandon Trent maintain his composure? Could the law remain impartial? The prosecutor paused briefly, absorbing the impact, then continued with renewed intensity. Her arguments intertwined facts and moral urgency, reminding all present that no one is immune from accountability. The courtroom hung on every syllable. The tension, already thick, became almost tangible, a living force drawing everyone deeper into the unfolding drama. Brandon Trent rose for a moment, his voice calm yet commanding. "Your Honor, I stand not to evade responsibility, but to honor truth," he declared. The words resonated across the room, a statement of integrity and defiance simultaneously. Each listener felt the weight of the moment, every mini-hook reinforcing curiosity and emotional investment. Judge Carpio's eyes softened briefly, a subtle acknowledgement of the human drama intertwined with legal procedure. "The pursuit of justice is never simple," she said, voice steady, yet layered with unspoken meaning. "It requires patience, insight, and unwavering adherence to principle. Let us proceed with both care and conviction." And just as the first section drew to a close, a final revelation arrived. An unexpected note slipped into evidence, hinting at alliances, pressures, and choices that had gone unnoticed. The courtroom gasped once more. Many hooks flared, curiosity surged, and the tension reached its zenith. In this moment, it became undeniably clear. The trial would not only test law and evidence, but also morality, loyalty, and the courage to confront power without compromise. The hook was complete. Viewers, now fully absorbed, had been drawn into a world of suspense, moral stakes, and courtroom drama where every moment mattered. Every mini-hook had ensured attention, curiosity, and emotional engagement. Every character, from Judge Caprio to Brandon Trent to the unseen forces of influence, had been set on a collision course with justice. And one thought lingered in the air as the first section closed. In a courtroom where loyalty, power, and morality intertwine, can truth truly prevail? Or will influence and legacy tilt the scales? The courtroom settled into an uneasy rhythm, but the tension remained electric, as if every person present could feel the weight of history pressing down upon them. Brandon Trent sat rigidly, yet composed, every line of his body speaking of determination and controlled anxiety. Across the aisle, the prosecution team prepared, eyes fixed, their resolve unwavering. This was no ordinary trial. It was a confrontation between legacy, influence, and the impartial pursuit of justice. Judge Caprio cleared her throat, a subtle sound that carried authority and expectation. "We will now examine the core issues of this case," she announced. Her words were precise, almost ceremonial, yet beneath them flowed a current of moral gravity. She understood that the audience, inside and outside the courtroom, was not merely witnessing legal procedure. They were witnessing a test of character, an exploration of accountability, honesty, and the ethical choices that define a person. The prosecution wasted no time. She began presenting the alleged transgressions with clarity and meticulous detail, weaving together a narrative that suggested manipulation, undue influence, and misuse of power. "The evidence shows," she began, "that decisions may have been affected by connections rather than facts. That privilege may have overshadowed principle." Her voice rang with conviction. Every phrase served as a mini-hook, keeping attention taut, curiosity alive, and suspense building. Brandon Trent's defense attorney rose immediately, countering with equal force. "Your Honor, the narrative presented is selective. It omits crucial context, ignores intent, and fails to acknowledge the moral complexity of the decisions made. His voice carried a calm intensity, appealing not only to legal principles but to human ethics. My client has acted with integrity, respecting both the law and the weight of family loyalty. The courtroom absorbed the verbal duel like a living organism, reacting to the ebb and flow of tension. The audience felt the moral stakes intensify: loyalty to family versus impartial accountability, personal honor versus societal expectation. Every detail, every glance, every slight hesitation became significant, a thread woven into the fabric of suspense that held everyone captive. Then, unexpectedly, a key witness was called forward. Her testimony promised to clarify certain events, but the moment she began speaking, it became clear that nothing was straightforward. Her words introduced contradictions, subtle inconsistencies that forced everyone to reconsider assumptions. Many hooks flared in rapid succession. Questions, doubts, and heightened anticipation gripped the room. Could the truth survive in such a tangled web of human emotion and influence? Brandon Trent's father, former President Daniel Trent, remained a silent presence in the gallery, yet his aura was palpable. His legacy loomed over the courtroom like a shadow, and the whispers among the spectators hinted at its impact. Can history shield a family from accountability? Someone murmured. The question resonated with every listener. Here, legacy was not a shield, it was a crucible. Judge Caprio watched carefully, her gaze sweeping across the room, taking in reactions, expressions, and nuances. She understood the delicate balance required to pursue justice without bias, to recognize moral complexity without succumbing to spectacle. We will hear every perspective, examine every detail, she said, her voice calm, yet commanding. Justice requires patience, integrity, and courage. The defense attorney introduced new evidence, documents, and records that painted Brandon in a different light. They suggested intention, careful deliberation, and adherence to principles of fairness. Each revelation was like a spark, igniting curiosity and moral contemplation among spectators. Every twist acted as a mini hook, compelling the audience to remain engaged, to question, to anticipate. And then, an unforeseen complication arose. A secondary witness stepped forward with a statement that subtly contradicted earlier claims. The courtroom collectively tensed. Could this testimony unravel the defense? Or would it, paradoxically, reinforce Brandon's claim of integrity under pressure? The stakes escalated, and every observer instinctively leaned in, emotionally invested in what would come next. The tension between prosecution and defense was not merely legal. It was profoundly human. Ethics, loyalty, ambition, and accountability collided in every exchange. Judge Caprio maintained an unshakable presence, guiding the proceedings with unwavering commitment to principle. This is not merely a matter of procedure, she said. It is a matter of conscience. Her words resonated deeply, reinforcing the moral weight of every decision and action unfolding in the room. As the morning session progressed, many revelations appeared at regular intervals. Letters, memos, subtle admissions, and inadvertent slips that teased the complexity of the truth. Each revelation was a hook, building suspense, tension, and curiosity. The audience could feel the invisible pressure mounting, as if the very walls of the courtroom held the gravity of the impending conflict. Brandon Trent, despite his composed exterior, felt the emotional weight keenly. Every gaze, every word, every glance from his father or the prosecution carried implications far beyond the immediate legal context. Family honor, personal reputation, public perception, all were at stake, intertwined in a moral labyrinth with no clear path. The first major twist of this section arrived when a piece of evidence surfaced that suggested a decision had been influenced not by malice, but by pressure from unseen allies. The courtroom reacted instantly. Whispers, wide eyes, subtle gasps. The revelation was subtle but powerful, a moral conundrum that forced both sides and the audience to reconsider the definitions of influence, loyalty, and ethical responsibility. Judge Carpio's eyes narrowed slightly, signaling the importance of the moment. "We must separate perception from reality," she stated, her voice both stern and measured. "The pursuit of justice demands clarity, courage, and adherence to principle, regardless of circumstance or status." The audience felt the weight of her words, recognizing that the trial was no longer simply legal. It was a test of human character under intense scrutiny. And then, a mini-hook struck. A previously overlooked testimony suggested that alliances within the legal teams themselves could have played a role in the events under review. Every observer felt the suspense heighten, the story deepening, the stakes multiplying. Could the truth be untangled, or was it destined to remain buried beneath layers of influence, loyalty, and moral ambiguity? By the end of the morning, the courtroom had transformed into a stage where morality, law, and family loyalty intersected violently. The audience, whether present or imagining the scene, was held in rapt attention. Every mini-hook, every unexpected revelation, and every moral nuance had reinforced the narrative tension. The central conflict was now clear: power versus principle, loyalty versus justice, legacy versus morality. As Judge Carpio called a brief recess, a hush settled over the room. Spectators, lawyers, and witnesses alike understood that the trial was far from over. The conflict had been fully introduced, the stakes firmly established, and the suspense meticulously layered. Every viewer, every listener, every reader was left with one unavoidable question. In a world where power, family, and influence collide with the law, who will truly emerge accountable? The courtroom reconvened after a short recess, but the atmosphere had shifted. The air itself seemed charged, dense with anticipation. Every spectator leaned forward, every gaze fixed on Brandon Trent and Judge Carpio. The trial had moved beyond facts and documents. It had become a high-stakes drama, a test of morality, influence, and accountability. The prosecution opened the session with renewed intensity. "Your Honor, new evidence has surfaced overnight," she began, voice calm but unwavering. "It challenges previous narratives and demands careful scrutiny." Heads turned. The courtroom collectively leaned in. Many hooks ignited immediately. What new information could possibly alter the course of such a high-profile case? Brandon Trent remained poised, though a subtle shift in his expression suggested he had anticipated the development. His attorney quickly rose, countering with emphasis on integrity and the pressures of public perception. "Justice," he said firmly, "must balance truth with the moral weight of personal responsibility. My client's actions have been consistent with honesty, loyalty, and respect." But the prosecutor was relentless. She introduced a series of documents and emails, each revealing layers of connections, decisions made under pressure, and potential influence from unseen advisors. Each piece acted like a mini-hook, drawing the courtroom deeper into the unfolding narrative. Every new twist seemed to contradict the previous one, leaving the audience on edge, unsure what to believe. Then came an unexpected testimony. A junior official, previously overlooked, revealed a series of phone calls and meetings that cast shadows over decisions made by Brandon Trent. Gasps swept the room. Could these subtle connections suggest undue influence? Could family loyalty have crossed into manipulation? The audience felt a thrill of tension, the first real crack in the narrative of controlled composure. Brandon's attorney immediately challenged the testimony, highlighting context, intent, and moral justification. "Your Honor, these communications reflect loyalty and responsible decision-making, not exploitation of privilege," he argued passionately. "Every action must be evaluated in full context." His words landed with weight, but they also raised further questions. Could context truly explain every choice, or was the shadow of influence too great to ignore? Judge Carpio listened intently, her eyes scanning every witness, every lawyer, and even the spectators. Her silence carried authority, amplifying the tension. She understood that every exchange now had emotional and moral resonance. Each statement, pause, and glance contributed to a rising storm of suspense. Then, just as the courtroom began to catch its breath, a twist occurred. A previously submitted report contained a discrepancy. It was small, almost imperceptible, but the implications were enormous. The courtroom murmured. Many hooks fired across the room. What could this subtle detail mean? Could it unravel key arguments, or would it merely deepen the intrigue? Brandon Trent remained still, yet the calmness belied the rapid calculations racing through his mind. Every move, every word, every reaction had to be measured carefully. A single misstep could shift the balance, not just legally, but morally and publicly. The stakes were enormous, and everyone present could feel the tension tighten like a drawn bowstring. A witness was recalled unexpectedly, one whose credibility had been unquestioned until now. Her testimony introduced contradictions that neither the prosecution nor defense had fully anticipated. The courtroom gasped collectively. Questions erupted in whispers. Could truth survive such scrutiny? Could morality withstand pressure from power and influence? The suspense was nearly tangible, thickening with each passing moment. The prosecution seized the opportunity to highlight patterns, coincidences, and potential conflicts of interest. Her voice was deliberate, precise, and charged with moral urgency. "We must not allow privilege to obscure accountability," she stated. "Every action, every decision, must be evaluated under the light of justice." Many hooks sparked across the room as every listener absorbed the implications. The narrative had shifted, the stakes had grown, and the story now felt unstoppable. Brandon Trent's father, Daniel Trent, stirred subtly in the gallery, a silent reminder of legacy and influence. Could the trial withstand such shadowed pressure? Could justice truly remain impartial when history and power loomed so large? The audience, both inside and outside the courtroom, felt the weight of these questions pressing down, deepening engagement and curiosity. Then, an unexpected interruption. A clerk delivered a previously undisclosed document. Judge Caprio's eyes narrowed slightly, signaling the importance of this moment. The document contained information that could either vindicate Brandon Trent or cast him in a wholly new light. Every observer instinctively leaned forward. Many hooks exploded. What was in the document? How would it alter the narrative? Who would it protect or expose? The defense attorney countered swiftly, emphasizing loyalty, ethical intent, and moral responsibility. "Your Honor, every choice must be seen through the lens of integrity," he said, his tone a mixture of conviction and urgency. "To judge my client without acknowledging the pressures and responsibilities he bore would be injustice itself." Yet the prosecution remained resolute, weaving a narrative that suggested missteps, subtle manipulations, and the potential influence of family power. Each phrase was carefully calculated to maximize suspense and ethical questioning. Many hooks continued to fire every few sentences. Unexpected contradictions, moral dilemmas, and questions about influence versus principle kept the audience riveted. A turning point arrived when an independent expert testified about the implications of certain communications. Their assessment suggested potential lapses in judgment, yet also highlighted moments of integrity. The courtroom teetered between certainty and doubt. Every observer was drawn further into the tension, unable to look away. Brandon Trent's composure remained intact, though inwardly he knew the pressure was mounting. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, every subtle nuance could sway the balance. Loyalty, morality, family, and public perception now intertwined in a complex web. Many hooks ensured the audience remained glued, fully invested in every rising turn of the narrative. Judge Caprio's tone remained steady, but the weight of her decisions was evident. "We will examine each detail, weigh each claim, and consider the moral as well as legal implications," she reminded the courtroom. Her words acted as both anchor and amplifier, grounding the proceedings while escalating tension. As the session progressed, a series of small but crucial revelations surfaced. Emails, memos, offhand statements. each hinting at potential misconduct or ethical lapses. Many hooks occurred at every turn, a word, a glance, a hesitation. The suspense ratcheted higher, and the audience remained on edge. By the close of this rising tension section, the courtroom had become a crucible of moral and legal stakes. Every participant felt the pressure, every spectator was emotionally engaged, and every twist left the audience eager for resolution. The conflict, now layered with complexity, had escalated. Power versus principle, family loyalty versus accountability, influence versus justice. And in that heightened atmosphere, one thought dominated all minds. As the stakes rise and the tension mounts, can integrity survive the storm of influence, expectation, and hidden truths? The courtroom had become electric, every heartbeat amplified, every breath held in collective suspense. Brandon Trent's composure, impeccable until now, showed the first subtle cracks. A slight tightening of his jaw, a momentary pause before answering a question. Small gestures, but enough to signal that even he felt the storm closing in. The trial had moved beyond procedure. It had become a moral battlefield. Judge Caprio's eyes swept the room, sharp, unyielding, yet empathetic. She understood that the next moments would define the course of justice in ways that were more than legal. They were profoundly human. "We are approaching the pivotal points of this trial," she declared. Her voice was calm, yet carried the weight of inevitability. The courtroom hung on her words, each listener acutely aware that the breaking point had arrived. The prosecution launched a series of rapid-fire questions, each carefully crafted to expose contradictions, reveal pressures, and test the limits of loyalty versus principle. Brandon Trent answered with poise, but the intensity of the questioning was relentless. Many hooks struck continuously, subtle revelations, unexpected admissions, and shifts in testimony that left the courtroom gasping, whispering, and reeling. Then came the first dramatic twist. A witness, previously thought neutral, revealed a private conversation that contradicted prior statements. Gasps swept the room. Murmurs turned to murmured outrage, then silence, as every person present sensed the gravity of the revelation. Could this testimony unravel the carefully constructed defense? Could it redefine public perception and legacy? Many hooks surged with every word, forcing the audience to sit on the edge of their seats. Brandon's attorney immediately rose, attempting to contextualize the revelation. "Your Honor, context matters," he said firmly. "The statements must be evaluated with consideration for intent, circumstance, and moral complexity. My client acted with integrity, even under pressure." His voice trembled slightly, not from fear but from the emotional weight of defending both a person and a principle. The prosecution was unrelenting, now weaving a narrative that suggested not only influence, but moral compromise. Each accusation was precise, each implication deliberate. Many hooks were relentless. The audience could feel the tension spike with every word, as if the courtroom itself held its collective breath. Every glance, every pause, every gesture contributed to the escalating drama. Then, the most intense moment arrived. A piece of evidence, long withheld, was introduced, a letter that revealed conflicting instructions, hidden pressures, and a network of decisions made behind closed doors. The courtroom gasped. For the first time, the human stakes were undeniable. Loyalty, family honor, and personal integrity collided violently. Could Brandon Trent withstand the scrutiny? Could truth survive the intricate web of influence and expectation? Brandon's eyes flicked toward Judge Caprio, a silent plea for fairness amidst chaos. The former president, Daniel Trent, remained tense in the gallery, his presence a shadow over every decision. Whispers erupted among the audience. Would power or principle prevail? Many hooks multiplied, layering suspense, emotion, and moral tension with each passing second. The defense attorney made a final, impassioned plea, appealing to conscience as much as law. "Your Honor, My client stands not only for himself, but for the principle that honesty, loyalty, and respect must guide all actions, he said, voice rising with emotion. Even under pressure, one must honor moral obligations. The courtroom absorbed his words. The air seemed to quiver with anticipation. But the prosecution had one last maneuver. A witness, previously ignored, delivered a statement that shook the foundation of the defense. Every listener sensed the tension snap like a taut wire. Could this testimony tip the scales? Could years of calculated composure falter under this new revelation? Many hooks surged, keeping the audience riveted, hearts racing with every pause and inflection. Brandon Trent's internal struggle became visible, if only in subtle ways. A slight tightening of the hands, a controlled inhale, a barely noticeable frown. For the first time, the audience glimpsed the human side of someone who had appeared almost untouchable. The breaking point was not just procedural. It was emotional, moral, and psychological. Judge Caprio leaned forward, her expression a mixture of resolve and empathy. "We are witnessing the complexities of human judgment," she said quietly but firmly. "Every decision, every choice carries weight beyond immediate perception. Justice demands patience, clarity, and unwavering adherence to principle." Her words struck a chord. The courtroom felt the gravity of the moment, understanding that the ultimate reckoning was imminent. A sudden, dramatic revelation arrived. A hidden document that had been thought irrelevant surfaced, revealing unexpected alliances and pressures. The courtroom gasped once more. Every mini-hook amplified tension. Questions multiplied, suspense deepened, and the moral stakes became nearly unbearable. Could loyalty, integrity, and truth withstand the relentless pressure of influence and expectation? Brandon Trent rose slowly, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "Your Honor, I accept responsibility for my actions where warranted," he declared. "But let it be known that integrity, honesty, and respect have guided every decision I made. I stand accountable not to privilege, but to principle." The courtroom felt the emotional impact of his words. Many hooks pulsed with intensity, keeping viewers and spectators fully immersed. Judge Caprio's gaze softened ever so slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of the human courage on display. Yet the weight of judgment was unrelenting. "We will examine every aspect, consider every perspective, and weigh both facts and morality," she said. Her tone was firm, unyielding, yet layered with empathy. The room collectively sensed that the breaking point had reached its apex. Everything had been tested, and the outcome remained uncertain. By the end of this section, every participant, from the audience to witnesses to legal teams, felt the full intensity of the trial. Many hooks had ensured continuous engagement. Tension had escalated to near unbearable levels, and the moral and emotional stakes had never been higher. Loyalty, power, integrity, and accountability collided, leaving the courtroom and the audience on the edge of precipice. And as Section 4 closed, one truth was undeniable. The breaking point had arrived, and now every choice, every word, and every action would determine not just the verdict, but the enduring weight of justice itself. The courtroom was silent as Judge Caprio adjusted her robes, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone present. After days of testimony, conflicting evidence, and moral reckoning, the trial had reached its apex. Every spectator, lawyer, and witness could feel the gravity of what was about to unfold. The air was thick with anticipation, as though the very walls themselves were holding their breath. Brandon Trent sat motionless, hands folded, face calm yet tense. He had endured scrutiny, moral dilemmas, and the relentless pressure of public and familial expectation. Now, all that remained was the judgment, an acknowledgement of truth, accountability, and principle. Many hooks surged through the room. Could integrity truly withstand the storm? Would loyalty and morality be honored? Or would influence tilt the scales? Judge Caprio rose, her voice steady, resonant, commanding attention. "We have examined every detail, every testimony, and every piece of evidence," she began. "The law is clear, and the pursuit of justice is paramount. But justice is not blind to human complexity. It recognizes intention, integrity, and moral courage alongside facts and procedure." Every listener felt the weight of her words, the culmination of suspense reaching a crescendo. The prosecution and defense exchanged a brief glance, each understanding the stakes that hung in the balance. The courtroom collectively leaned forward, the tension almost tangible. Many hooks flickered in every mind, questions, doubts, and anticipation sparking with every pause. Everyone knew that the coming words would decide not just the outcome of the trial, but the enduring moral message. Judge Caprio continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Brandon Trent, you have been subjected to intense scrutiny, not merely for your actions, but for the weight of your family legacy and the expectations it carries. You have demonstrated composure, honesty, and a willingness to face accountability. This court recognizes the complexity of your circumstances, yet upholds the principle that no one is above the law." Gasps and murmurs swept through the room. Many hooks flared once more, viewers on the edge of their seats, absorbed in the unfolding moment. Justice, tempered by fairness, had been delivered, yet the emotional impact resonated far beyond legal verdicts. Judge Caprio paused, letting the gravity of her statement settle. "At the same time," she continued, "the law requires that all actions, regardless of intent, be measured against accountability. Where missteps occurred, they must be acknowledged and addressed. Where integrity and honesty prevailed, they must be recognized and honored." Every ear strained. Every observer felt the moral resonance of her words. This was not merely a verdict. It was a profound declaration about the balance between justice, morality, and human complexity. Brandon Trent's attorney exhaled softly, a mixture of relief and emotional release, while the prosecution maintained her composure but allowed a subtle acknowledgement of respect. Many hooks had served their purpose, keeping tension taut until the final moral and legal resolution. Then came the final declaration, the moment that would be remembered in both legal and moral terms. This court finds that while certain actions under scrutiny require acknowledgement and correction, the principles of honesty, respect, and accountability have guided the defendant's conduct. In recognition of this balance, the court upholds justice in a manner that honors both law and morality. A collective exhale swept through the courtroom. The payoff had arrived, justice tempered with recognition of human complexity. Loyalty, morality, and integrity had been acknowledged alongside the unyielding weight of the law. Many hooks had ensured every second of suspense was maximized, culminating in a resolution that was both satisfying and profound. Brandon Trent's expression shifted subtly, a faint smile of relief and quiet gratitude. He had endured scrutiny, faced moral dilemmas, and maintained composure under immense pressure. Justice, in its highest form, had acknowledged both accountability and integrity. The audience, fully engaged throughout, felt the emotional resonance. Truth, fairness, and moral courage had triumphed. Judge Caprio's final words reinforced the universal message. "Let this trial serve as a reminder," she said, her voice calm yet powerful, "that no individual, regardless of influence or lineage, is above the law. Accountability, honesty, and respect are the pillars upon which justice stands. Those who uphold them honor not only themselves, but the society they serve." Many hooks continued subtly, reinforcing reflection and anticipation. Every participant, every spectator, was left with a profound awareness of the ethical, emotional, and legal weight of the trial. The climax had delivered both resolution and moral clarity, leaving the audience intellectually and emotionally satisfied. As the gavel finally fell, a sense of closure swept the room. The trial, with all its suspense, complexity, and moral challenge, had reached a decisive, justice-centered conclusion. Loyalty, morality, and principle had been tested, and the payoff had honored the integrity of both law and humanity. And in that moment, the audience, captivated from the first shocking entry of Brandon Trent, understood the enduring truth. Justice is not merely a matter of law, but of courage, integrity, and the willingness to uphold morality even under the weight of power and expectation. The courtroom had settled into an almost reverent silence. The tension that had gripped the room for days was now replaced with a profound sense of reflection. Brandon Trent sat quietly, absorbing the verdict, the weight of scrutiny, and the culmination of every moral and legal challenge he had faced. It was a moment that transcended the courtroom, a moment that would be remembered for the lessons it carried about integrity, loyalty, and accountability. Judge Caprio's gaze softened as she looked across the room. She spoke slowly, deliberately, ensuring every word resonated. This trial was not merely about decisions made under pressure. It was about character, responsibility, and the courage to face truth. It reminds us all that the measure of a person lies not only in their choices, but in their willingness to uphold honesty and respect in the face of immense challenge. Many hooks were subtle but impactful here, drawing the audience deeper into reflection rather than suspense, leaving them emotionally invested until the very last moment. Brandon Trent rose, his voice steady but filled with quiet emotion. "I have learned," he said, "that integrity cannot be compromised, even under the weight of family legacy, expectation, or public scrutiny. Accountability is not punishment. It is the recognition that our actions affect others, and that moral courage is essential in every decision we make." His words struck the courtroom like a gentle yet powerful revelation. Each listener felt the emotional gravity, the subtle thrill of closure, and the moral clarity that came with it. The prosecution, though firm in her pursuit of justice, acknowledged the depth of truth and integrity displayed. Her nod, though subtle, spoke volumes. Justice had been served, not in a simplistic way, but in a manner that honored both law and human conscience. Many hooks here reinforced engagement, not through suspense, but through emotional resonance. The audience absorbed the lesson fully. Power alone does not define morality. Integrity does. Family members in the gallery, previously tense with the weight of expectation, now exhaled. Even Daniel Trent, Brandon's father, allowed a faint, approving smile to emerge. He understood the significance of what had transpired. His son had faced scrutiny, withstood pressure, and emerged with dignity intact. Loyalty and respect had been preserved without undermining justice, a delicate balance achieved in a moment of profound moral significance. Judge Caprio continued, her voice measured and reflective. "May this trial serve as a lasting reminder. Honesty, respect, and accountability are not optional. They are the foundation upon which trust, family, and society are built. When confronted with power or influence, it is courage, not privilege, that defines true character." Every word lingered, echoing in the minds of everyone present, leaving the audience with a lasting emotional imprint. The spectators, witnesses, and legal teams reflected quietly, the suspense of previous days replaced by understanding. Many hooks now served a reflective purpose, encouraging contemplation, reinforcing the moral themes, and leaving viewers with a sense of resolution and learning. Every twist, revelation, and confrontation of the trial had culminated in this moment, a triumph of integrity over influence, morality over manipulation, and principle over power. Brandon Trent looked around the courtroom one last time, his eyes meeting those of Judge Caprio. There was mutual recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the lessons learned, the challenges faced, and the moral victory achieved. In that gaze, the audience could sense both relief and gratitude, a quiet acknowledgement that justice had been honored without compromise. As the final words were spoken, a sense of closure settled over the room. The trial had tested every participant, challenged every assumption, and forced the audience to consider the delicate balance between law, morality, and human complexity. Many hooks had guided viewers through suspense, conflict, rising tension, and finally emotional resolution, ensuring engagement from start to finish. The ultimate lesson resonated. No individual, regardless of power or influence, is above the law. True accountability is rooted in honesty, integrity, and respect. And those who uphold these principles leave a legacy far greater than wealth, status, or fleeting advantage. Brandon Trent left the courtroom with his head held high. He had faced scrutiny, confronted moral dilemmas, and emerged with both personal and public integrity intact. The courtroom, the spectators, and the audience at home understood that justice, when tempered with principle and courage, was not only achievable, it was enduring. As the doors closed behind him, a hush remained, a collective acknowledgement of the journey the courtroom had witnessed. The story had reached its conclusion, but its impact lingered, echoing long after the final gavel struck. Viewers were left with a sense of moral clarity, emotional resonance, and the enduring truth that courage, loyalty, and accountability remain the pillars upon which justice, and life itself, is built. The courtroom was emptying, yet the weight of the lessons learned remained. Every twist, every mini-hook, every moral confrontation had guided the audience to this final realization. Integrity endures, accountability matters, and no one, regardless of influence, is beyond the reach of justice. And as Brandon Trent stepped into the sunlight outside the courthouse, the story closed not with fanfare, but with a quiet affirmation. Justice, courage, and morality had triumphed, leaving a legacy that would outlast any trial, any power, and any fleeting shadow of influence.